Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Fraze, Farm Family Coach, here with another episode full of transition tips, tactics, and sometimes hard truths to get harmony on your farm. Today we're talking about discuss the undiscussable. And there was a time in 2014 when I was honored to speak to the Mexican Holstein Association in Tlaxcala, Mexico. And part of the event was a mariachi band touring us around in the evening, walking around, looking at different sites. And we ended up in the bull ring where there was the El Toro. El Toro was not there. It was just us and the mariachi band. But it's a good metaphor for what I want to talk about today, because for many years, over 20 years, I have coined the phrase, discuss the undiscussable, B-U-L-L. And here he is, Beanie Baby Ox. This is my talking stick. And just imagine as you're listening to this, that you have a bull in the middle of the room of your farm, family, or ranch, and everybody knows it's there, but nobody's willing to talk about it. And so the bull keeps wreaking havoc. And I grew up chasing steers, so trust me, I know of what I speak. And one time I remember we were in the pasture as young children. My mom was a very non-helicopter parent, shall we say. And the four of us, and we're over in the pasture building forts in the pasture. And all of a sudden the steers decided that they wanted to start chasing us, and we got stampeded. So that was an exciting day. And I have a barbed wire scar in the left leg, showing what it took to get my little sister over the fence first, and then the rest of us followed. Well, back to discuss the undiscussable. Today, I want you to think about something we talked about in podcast number 6 on getting to the table, is looking at what your key communication style is. So action people want directness and results orientation, and they're very brief and very concise. Process people want options, they want order, and they don't like to be rushed. And then you have the people styles, people like me who like to talk about relationship and have a little bit of relationship building before we dive into the business side of the conversation. And then we have the ideas people like my son who want to tell you about their big picture without interruption. So as we get ready to talk about tough issues, think about how you like to communicate and be aware that not everybody's like you. And different is not wrong. It's just different. So try and have some empathy and compassion and perspective as to how other people might choose or want to get their ideas across with you. The other thing I want you to take a note of is, how old are you today? And this is understanding that your age has certain tasks that if they're frustrated, they will cause conflict. So when I get in front of a live audience, I enjoy getting all the 20-year-olds to stand up, and I say, this is the decade of independence. And then I say, and I hope you're not still living in your mother's basement. And then people laugh, and actually some of them still are. They're saving money and trying to get debt servicing capacity going, whatever. So in your 20s, it's about independence, and it's your decade about making it. And in conflict resolution and in farm family transition, where this becomes a sticking point and not healthy is that if you've never left your farm to go away to college or to go away and get other training or work for someone else, you may wake up someday at 32 and feel a little bit trapped because you've never experienced a management style beyond the one of your own family farm, your mom and your dad's style, or your aunts and uncles or grandparents. In your 30s, it's about mastering success. And this is also the decade of exhaustion. This is where my son is right now. Mid-30s, 3 children under 6, not very good nights sometimes, and interrupted sleep. And it's tiring. And many of you are working off-farm jobs, working on the farm, working on the ranch, and you've got a lot of balls in the air, and you're exhausted. But in your 30s, you're proving what you can do and how you can manage and what your passion is in agriculture. And then 40 comes. And this is where I get the phone calls. Elaine, how did you know I was 42? I said, well, you told me your dad was 62, and I'm guessing that you're approaching 42, and you're frustrated. Really? How did you know? Well, because you, at the time of being 40, need to be in power and control of your own destiny. Woo, Very interesting, undiscussable words, power and control. When does that shift from the founding generation to the next generation? The next thing is in your 50s, it's quality of life issues. And so I do have 55 and 57-year-olds come to me and say, Elaine, it's time for us to have these conversations with our kids. We want to know where they're at. We want to step back. We don't want to work past 65 on this farm full time. And we'd like to be proactive. So 50-year-olds have quit dusting. And I use that as a joke too, because dusting is a useless activity, as we all know, but it's home maintenance. Anyway, quality of life issues in your 50s become more pertinent. And so this is also the age where maybe the arthritis is starting to show up, the bad backs, and some other health issues in terms that your body is wearing out after putting in 30-some crops. And now it's time to think about how you step back without stepping away, which brings us to our 60s, which is where I am. And in your 60s, it's the time of starting over. And many of you may want to become the hired person again, or an employee of the farm, and only work when you want to work and not start the semi at minus 42 in January because you'd rather be somewhere warmer or not having to get out in the cold quite so much. Anyway, whatever a good day looks like to you on the farm is shifting by the time you're in your 60s. And this is where you can't just wake up one day and say, oh, I'm out of here. You need a transition map process in terms of what your roles and responsibilities will be, because the undiscussable in your 60s is retirement. And as you know, most farmers do not retire. I call it reinvention. They reinvent their roles. And as Dick Whitman says, they step back without stepping away. So they do not want to be the main decision maker or the main manager anymore. And then in your 70s, hopefully you're coming up to a meaningful life and you're still driving the combine when you want to, operating the grain cart, sorting cattle, doing the branding, whatever floats your boat, but you're getting to choose what you will or will not do as your responsibilities. And for women in their 70s, the question is, when is it her turn to get what she needs and wants? And I've had many a 72-year-old say, Elaine, I'm done. I'm tired. I do not want to live at Grand Central Station anymore. And I want to move to town, to be close to my friends, to do my quilting, go to Bible study, or just hang out with my grandkids and not be the main person keeping things going at Grand Central Station anymore. And then we have to talk about 80-year-olds because they're still involved. I had an 80-year-old on a coaching call who was just miffed at me the other day because he was out working in his alfalfa field and he did not want to be in a family meeting. He had things to do. And then there's the 90-year-olds. I'm thinking of the 93-year-old grandmother who still has significant shares in the ranch and is not doing the right thing, which is transitioning wealth with a warm hand instead of a cold one. And there's a lot of conflict and angst over what people feel they're entitled to because of expectations that have not been dealt with. So why don't folks talk about the undiscussable issues? Well, first of all, they're scared. They don't want to open up Pandora's box. And I always say procrastination and conflict avoidance is killing agriculture because people keep avoiding it. And a whole year goes by and they say, oh, we'll talk about it next year. We'll talk about it after seeding or after harvest or after calving or after haying or after spraying. Oh, after Christmas or after Thanksgiving. No, we'll talk about it. And then after Easter. And before you know it, a whole year has gone by. So if you're not scared, maybe it was that you did get bold and brave one day and you put out what you really wanted onto the table and your ideas got shot down. And you said, that's it. Nobody cares what I say or think anyway. So I'm just going to go and have my own little pity party over in the corner over there. Well, that's not helping you, is it? Because you get the behavior that you accept and you do not have because you do not ask. So you have to be clear about what you want. And Brene Brown has always said, being clear is kind. And as a coach, I want you to think about in this conversation, what is it you expect? Clarity of expectations, certainty of timelines and agreements, and a commitment to act, to have those conversations, to get those solutions done, to get action created. Another thing is that there might be a lot of red ink, so to speak, in the emotional bank accounts on your farm. And if you go to one of my prior podcasts on culture beats strategy, I explain about good behavior, how you believe, and how you make decisions being the glue that holds your farm together. And so you need to understand that you need to put deposits in people's emotional bank accounts, not just keep taking withdrawals. And perhaps you're doing that. You're taking out way too many withdrawals. Another thing is that folks don't talk about the undiscussable because they feel that they are a human doing, not a human being. So if they aren't doing something, or if they aren't working all the time, then talk's cheap, and we just have way too much work to do around here. Where is that written? Why do we have so many workaholics in agriculture? Why don't we have this lovely dance between we work, we play, we celebrate, we're strong? So self-worth is based on their action and their workaholism, or how much money is in the bank account, which to me is not an indicator of self-worth of any kind. To me, self-worth is knowing that you're a human being who has value, and every human being has value. Some of you are in a timing situation. When are people going to be ready? And a tool I want to help you with in this, to help indicate readiness and willingness to some degree, is on a scale of 1 to 10. And this is based on the work of Michael Pantalon, who wrote the book called Instant Influence. So on a scale of 1 to 10, Charlie, with 10 being really ready, how ready are you to sit down with a facilitator and start talking about what your life is going to look like on the farm when you turn 65 next year? Because your son and daughter-in-law and your daughter and spouse are all successors, and they're all waiting to understand when they can start being the main managers. Time goes by. What are your timelines? And then, of course, we have the big elephant and bull in the middle of the room, which is conflict avoidance. Elaine, I'm conflict avoidance. I just want to run the other way. And I go, well, how's that working for you? Probably not very well and not very good, because conflict is not bad. Unresolved conflict is bad. So your conflict style could be avoidance. It could be accommodating. And these are the people say, yes, dear, yes, whatever you want, Dad, that's fine. No, yeah. And you're stuffing and stuffing and stuffing all of the stuff, which is what is called volcanic behavior, because all of a sudden you're not going to be able to take it anymore. And that's when the blow-ups occur. And it never ceases to amaze me how many calls I get the week before Canadian Thanksgiving, when you're in the throes of harvest and you're having a lot of blow-ups because you're tired and stressed and you're not creating solutions. Another one is competing. And I'll never forget the family meeting where the father said to his son, okay, you can go and split off and have your own farm, and I'm just going to spend the next 10 years competing with you. And I just went, are you kidding me? Where is that written that that's a good idea? Another conflict style is compromising and giving in and not feeling. But the one that you want to work towards is collaborating, where there's a sense of win-win for everyone. So I'm just going to give you my 10 tools for talking about the tough issues. I've been using this framework probably since I was on a plane coming back from Toronto in 2003, which was almost 20 years ago. And these are just practical tools and insights for how you can grab the bull by the horns and discuss the undiscussable. The first one is to take charge. Literally grab the bull by the horns and decide that you are going to be the one now who is going to be the driver of this conversation, and make sure that you get facilitation and outside help if you think that you need it, to get really good, robust conversations. One of the things that you can do is find my key challenge audit on my website at farmfamilycoach.com, and you can fill out that as a self-awareness pieces to actually identifying and taking charge. What are your key issues? The next thing I want you to do is to come from curiosity and not judgment. I want you to be, learner mindset, not a judging one, and identify what your conflict style typically is, your communication style, and to control your anger. Anger comes from hurt, fear, and frustration. And that's according to the work of Dr. Dan Allender, who wrote a book called The Wounded Heart, which is actually about child abuse. But it's an interesting framework that I've heard other people talk about, because anger is a secondary emotion. It's not really what it is. There is something deeper behind. So when someone shows up to you and is really angry, first response is, wow, you're really upset. What's this about? And then you listen. And you try and be what we call the pigeon on the balcony. Pretend you're looking down on this person, and you're removing yourself a bit to just observe the behavior. And it's part of Dr. Marshall Rosenberger's framework for nonviolent communication. You also want to seek common ground. May I make a request? Is that we get together after supper with a cup of coffee at the coffee table, and we just start exploring what we need to talk about here. And in the Alpha course that we took on marriage, on how to have a stronger marriage, it's called Marriage Time, where you actually have a regular way or place to sit down and talk about the state of your union. Well, why wouldn't you do that for the state of your farm as well, and what's working well and what isn't? So you want to be clarifying with each other, and you want to check, and you want to figure out what is happening in terms of up here in being in positions of interest, which is in conflict resolution positions and interest. And where you want to be is diving down to seeking more understanding underneath the iceberg, so to speak, of what do you both want, which is called the common interest. And what I want on my farm is harmony. I want profitability, and I want everyone to love what they're doing. And we basically have that. We have a very happy culture on our farm, which I'm very thankful for. But that doesn't mean we don't have conflict. That doesn't mean that stuff doesn't break down. And that doesn't mean that there isn't frustration, especially when people get really, really tired, which we are right now at the 80% done mark of seeding at the end of May. Another tool for talking about tough issues is to ask deeply and to ask better questions. So balance your speaking and listening. There's a reason people always say, well, we have 2 ears and 1 tongue, is that we need to be better listeners. And when you don't understand, you say, could you tell me that in a different way? I don't really understand what you mean. Or do you mean this? And then you paraphrase it back to them, and you help describe your own feelings. And you go, wow, I had no idea, or I'm so sorry, or that makes me feel really disappointed. Or, wow, I'm super excited about that, because now I really understand what you want, and I haven't been able to read your mind because nobody can. So now I understand what you're thinking about, and that really, really helps me. So I used to hold up toilet paper and say, be soft on the person, but hard on the problem, just like toilet paper. The other thing is to play. And the reason I use a Beanie Baby Bull and other toys and props when I'm speaking and coaching is because this is a heavy place. And there's a piece in coaching that says, let the silence do the heavy lifting. So play with possibility, don't prejudge the outcome, and use this talking stick, something soft, where when you hold the talking stick, you get to speak uninterrupted. And I'll tell you a funny story of a dairy farmer out on Vancouver Island that I was working with, and his sons. He said, Elaine, we were like the talking stick idea, but we're in the middle of the barn one day, and the only thing I could find was an empty water bottle. And so he picked it up and he said, pretend Elaine is here. This is the talking stick. And they used that plastic water bottle as a talking stick to make some concrete and hard, robust conversations about some very important decisions they had to make in the moment in the dairy barn. When I listen, people talk. And when you nod your head, and when you lean in, when you write things down, and you don't answer your cell phone, and maybe you take notes on your cell phone, okay, I'll give you that much. But cell phones tend to be quite a distraction. And if you answer it, you're telling the other person that conversation that they're in with you is not that important. So explore their interests and feelings and guess and say, I suspect, that's like another powerful question. I suspect that you're really hurting physically and emotionally. Do you want to tell me about that? And if you're not ready to tell me right now, when will you be ready? And check out my friend's website, thinkingforresults.com. The other thing is that people don't like to be pushed. And I remember as a young girl, we used to have sawed-off hockey sticks that we'd use as prods for guiding the cattle where they were going. We wouldn't be hard on them, but cattle need to be treated with care and they need to be guided. But cattle do not like to be prodded with electric cattle prods, and neither do people. And it's electric. It's literally electric in a family meeting where a father or mother is feeling literally pushed and shoved. And so you need to discuss the undiscussable as the next generation say, it's not my intention to push you off of this farm, but it is my intention to get clarity as to when I and my spouse will have more decision-making power and more equity here. The other one that you want to ask is there anything else? So you're not prodding and you're not pushing, but you're asking for more clarification and you're being patient. Have we missed anything? Is there something I'm still missing? And here's another question. Is that right? And here's the grandmother-in-law question. What would you like me to do differently? It's very helpful. It's also a very brave question to ask, because when you say, what would you like me to do differently? You are taking personal responsibility for your actions or your conflict avoidant behavior. And Marilee Adams says, change your questions, change your life. It's one of her books. It's an awesome book. And she also has the choice map, which is a learner judge your mindset roadmap that you can get off her website called the inquiryinstitute.com. Marilee Adams, inquiryinstitute.com, the choice map. And as a learner, you have to ask yourself, what am I responsible for? All right. So you need to figure out, what are you responsible for, and take responsibility for that. Another undiscussable tool is, what are you doing on purpose to create and cultivate trust? Do you do what you say you will do in a timely fashion? How are you building up confidence in the relationship? Are you walking your talk? Because on our farm, we want a culture of fairness, respect, and commitment. We're certified seed growers. We carry errors and emissions insurance. We act with integrity, and we expect everyone who interacts with us to do the same and to be honest and to walk their talk. Another thing we talk about in ranching is good fences. So how do you respect boundaries? And maybe a person is not able to show them or give you a lot of understanding at the time that you're asking, but you don't let them go. You create healthy boundaries and you say, by when? By when will you be able to give me an answer, Dad, on what your plan is for transferring some of the assets of this farm, because I want to start building equity? By when, Mom, are you going to be training another person, an ag expert or QuickBooks or simply accounting? Or where is it written that I, just because I'm female, I'm the one who needs to be doing the books on the farm? And newsflash, on our farm, that was never going to happen, because that is not my superpower or my strength, to be taking care of details. So clear roles and responsibilities. And is it in the family circle or the business circle? Guidelines for jobs and performance, being clear about expectations, and also confidentiality. It's another reason why people don't come to the table to talk about tough issues, is because they're afraid that it's going to get blabbed all over the neighborhood. Where is that written? Talk about your code of conduct and your guidelines for confidentiality, and cut out the family gossip. And remember, we all end up in a box. And some of you may have seen the picture of my casket that is in my basement. And I purchased it over 3 years ago and don't know when it will be used, but I'm okay thinking about what is beyond and after my death. And I'm okay to talk about it as part of the estate plan and part of the wills, which is not your succession plan. And that's a whole other podcast. And I'd like, in closing, just to encourage you to extend the olive branch. Behind me, you can see the lavender there. Just think of that as like a branch of an olive tree. When you reach out, that is another positive conflict behavior for resolution, and say, I sense something's not quite right here. Have I done anything to cause offense? Are we okay? And if we're not okay, can you tell me what I need to know? Because I can't read your mind. And John Gottman, in his book, 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, said, this is making quick repair. So when we discuss the undiscussable and we talk about a tough issue, and there's lots of emotion and there's lots of hurt, it's okay. You're not going to die. You can sit in that. But you have to then think about creating solutions, expressing emotions, reaching out and adapting to make repair. All of these skills can be yours in an online assessment at our website with a conflict dynamic profile that you can do, and it's $55 per person. So I encourage you to reach out to do the conflict dynamic profile for self-assessment to know what your conflict behaviors look like. And then you'll also figure out what your hot buttons are that help start that raging bull happening in you, and you can pull back and say, nope, not going to go there anymore. I'm going to do what Elaine suggested. I'm going to grab the bull by the horns. I'm going to seek common interests. I'm going to find out what the other person is thinking, feeling, and needing. And we are going to deal with the bull in the middle of our farm. You can do this. Discuss the undiscussable, BULL. It's time. It's freeing. And I want everyone listening to this podcast to have an amazing life on their ranch and on their farm, because you can get better at conflict resolution and your life will be so much better. I hope you've picked up a few points here. I encourage you to go to farmfamilycoach.com and see more resources. Sign up for my insights so I can come and coach you every couple of weeks, and also put you into the subscription mode for this podcast. And I have a request that if this has resonated with you, will you please share it with your friends, give us a review, and let us know how we have helped you discuss the undiscussable. See you next time.